Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we've got a video that was a question that I haven't heard before, but basically, if the battleship can sweep mines, could she also carry and lay mines? And the short answer to this question is no. Battleship New Jersey never carried mines or served as a mine layer. And I'm not aware of any battleships that acted as minesweepers while they were still battleships. Which isn't to say it didn't happen, just I'm not aware of it. There were a couple of World War II era destroyers in the US Navy, just because of how many we had, that get converted into DMSs for destroyer minesweepers or even destroyer mine layers. Those tended to be older classes that were kind of surplus at that point. It was either convert them or get rid of them entirely. You do have frontline warships like battleships being used as minesweepers in an auxiliary function. It's very common, especially during the World War II timeframe, for Baltic nations to have ships as large as cruisers able to carry mines. And what that means is they have magazines somewhere on board, usually around the aft superstructure area, for mine stowage. And they have rails that run down the aft third of the deck, more or less, roughly where we're standing right now in Battleship New Jersey. And the mines would be on those rails. And it almost works like depth charges. When you're laying the mines, they get slid down those rails and right off the back of the ship as the ship is sailing through the proposed minefield. This isn't ideal for ships like cruisers, destroyers, and battleships because, one, you're adding more weight in these mine rails and in the mines themselves and the specific magazines for them. But also, you're now adding something extremely explosive to an unarmored part of the ship. So oftentimes ships that would act as auxiliary mine layers like destroyers and cruisers would not carry those all the time. If they were going to do a mine laying operation, they would go into port, they'd get the mines, they'd go out, they'd do that, and then they would operate as a cruiser or destroyer, whatever the case may be later on. The US Navy tends to have exclusive mine warfare ships. So for example, minesweepers or mine layers, they tend to be just that. You have a couple of instances like the old cruiser Baltimore. I think she was C6, not the World War II era Baltimore. The old cruiser Baltimore gets turned into a mine layer after she's done being a cruiser, but I'm not aware of any circumstances of active ships like this one. You have ships like USS Terror that are built specifically to be mine layers, or ships like USS Lucid, a museum ship in Stockton, California, that are built specifically to be minesweepers. That said, there's definitely some utility to being able to do that from other ships. And that's where Battleship New Jersey's ability to sweep mines comes into play. Battleship New Jersey is designed to operate in restricted waters, like around invasion beaches, the sorts of places that would typically be heavily mined by the defender. In theory, prior to one of those invasions, you would have minesweepers go in and sweep channels through those minefields. However, it's not a perfect process, especially when this ship was being designed before our underwater surveillance equipment was as effective as it is today. And so, if the battleship ended up operating in heavily mined waters, she could deploy her paravanes to act as a very, very, very expensive minesweeper. I'm not aware of any of the Iowa-class battleships that still have paravanes on display, but the older World War II battleships, Alabama, North Carolina, Texas, and Massachusetts, I believe all do have paravanes, and Massachusetts at least has both a sea mine in display on the ship in addition to their paravane. A very common misconception I see online, and maybe it's from video games, I'm not entirely sure, but it's the idea that mines can be used as offensive weapons, that surface ships like a battleship could carry mines and then, like, during an engagement, sail in front of an enemy battle line, drop their mines so that the enemy fleet sails into it causing a disproportionate amount of damage. And I'm just not aware of any instance of that happening. Mines are not an offensive weapon. They're a defensive weapon that's relatively easy to deal with. However, they do act as really good area denial assets, which then forces the enemy to commit time and resources into sweeping them before they can come in and take that area, whether it's sailing into a contested harbor. This goes all the way back to the Civil War with folks like David Farragut, the first admiral of the United States Navy, saying, "Darn the torpedoes, full steam ahead." During the Civil War, mines were actually called torpedoes. And it wasn't until torpedoes became self-propelled mines that stationary torpedoes became mines. Or whether it's contesting invasion beaches, like the massive mine-sweeping effort that had to take place before the Normandy invasions. Even so, mines tend to be more dangerous to the ships carrying them than to ships they hit. There are plenty of instances of ships hitting mines, and some of them even sink, but battleships tend to survive hitting mines, and even smaller ships tend to have a reasonable success of surviving a single mine strike. But mine layers are carrying a massive amount of explosives on board in relatively exposed positions, and if one of them is mishandled or something else goes wrong, it could lead to multiple detonating, potentially destroying the ship. By World War II, not only were battleships not carrying mines, most of them weren't carrying torpedoes anymore, even though those tended to be stowed below decks in much safer magazines. Just a really large warhead that you're likely not going to get close enough to an enemy ship to use. Mines are even worse than torpedoes. So, what do you think? Do you think that huge, expensive capital ships like a battleship should be able to handle every single weapon system available? Or do you think they should just have a main weapon system, like their gun system, and do that really, really well and really, really safely? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.